The mysteries of the celestial Jerusalem. Have you ever heard of the celestial Jerusalem? That perfect city, full of light and mysteries, described in the book of Revelation? Well, this powerful image has intrigued millions of people for centuries. After all, who wouldn't be curious about the idea of a place so magnificent that even its streets are made of pure gold? But before we dive into its gates made of pearls and its dazzling gemstones, we need to grasp the basics. What does this celestial Jerusalem actually represent? Is it just a metaphor, or is there something deeper behind this concept? Stick with me, because you're about to be amazed. Let's start with its origin. The celestial Jerusalem is described in Revelation 21, where the Apostle John shares a breathtaking vision, a city descending from heaven, prepared like a bride beautifully adorned for her husband. Pretty poetic, right? But there's much more to this story than poetry. The city is not just a physical place, but a representation of something far greater, the union between the divine and humanity. It's like the happy ending of a cosmic drama, complete with reconciliation and celebration. Here's an interesting detail. Every element of this description is filled with biblical symbolism. The 12 gates, the 12 foundations, and even the city's dimensions hold special significance. The number 12, for example, is closely tied to the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 apostles, symbolizing the completeness of God's people. It's clear that nothing in this description is random. Even the colors and materials mentioned have a purpose. If you enjoy unraveling mysteries, you'll love diving into the details of this divine city. But don't worry, you don't have to be a theologian or an expert in prophecies to grasp its meaning. In fact, all of this was written to inspire hope in difficult times. Imagine the context. Revelation was written during an era of persecution when Christians needed a powerful message to stay strong in their faith. The celestial Jerusalem emerges as a promise of redemption, like a light at the end of the tunnel, saying, "Hold on tight. The best is yet to come." And here's the best part. This message is still relevant today. We face our own apocalypses, whether it's at work, in personal life, or in daily challenges. Reflecting on the New Jerusalem can bring a fresh perspective. After all, who hasn't needed a little hope to keep going? If you're already wondering how all of this connects to your life, stay tuned. In the next few minutes, we'll break down every detail. Let's dive into the biblical symbols and uncover what they reveal. Ready? The New Jerusalem. Symbols and meanings. Symbols. They're like little puzzles hidden in plain sight. And the celestial Jerusalem is full of them. Take, for instance, the 12 gates of the city, each named after one of the tribes of Israel. That's more than just a fancy design. It's a reminder of God's covenant with his people. And what about the city's foundations? Each one bears the name of an apostle. Together, these symbols create a powerful connection between the past and the future, between the old and the new covenant. It's as if God is saying, "Everything I promised, I will fulfill." Now, let's talk about the city's measurements. John describes it as a perfect square, or rather, a cube with equal width, height, and length. Why is that important? Well, in the Bible, the cube symbolizes divine perfection. The most sacred part of Solomon's temple, the Holy of Holies, was also cube-shaped. Coincidence? Not at all. The New Jerusalem is, in a sense, the ultimate Holy of Holies, a place where God and humanity will dwell together in complete unity. And the gemstones mentioned? They're not just there for show. Each one represents something profound. Jasper, for example, is often associated with God's glory and purity. The transparent gold streets? They symbolize holiness. Does that sound complex? It doesn't have to be. Think about how a gemstone is cut and polished to reveal its beauty. The promise of the celestial Jerusalem is like that, a place shaped by God's hand to be flawless. Here's something practical. Have you ever considered the symbols you carry in your own life? Maybe it's a photograph, an object, or even a memory that holds deep meaning. These personal symbols remind us of what truly matters. Similarly, the New Jerusalem serves as a constant reminder of what awaits us, a place of peace, unity, and redemption. But let's not get lost in the dazzling details. The most important takeaway is the purpose behind all these symbols. The biblical symbols of the city show that the celestial Jerusalem is the ultimate destination of a spiritual journey. Speaking of journeys, let's take a step further and explore the promise of transformation and redemption that this city represents. After all, what's a perfect city without transformed people to inhabit it? The promise of redemption and transformation. If there's one thing the celestial Jerusalem promises, it's redemption. But what does that actually mean? Redemption is the idea of being rescued or restored, like taking something that seemed lost and bringing it back to its original brilliance. Imagine finding an old, dusty object in your attic and realizing it's a priceless treasure. That's what God promises to do with us. The celestial Jerusalem isn't just a beautiful place, it's the culmination of a transformative process that begins here and now. And let's talk about transformation. It's not something that happens overnight, is it? It's a gradual process that takes effort and patience. Think about how a diamond is formed. It starts as coal, subjected to intense pressure and heat until it becomes a sparkling jewel. Similarly, the promise of the New Jerusalem is that each of us can be refined into something extraordinary. Isn't that inspiring? Here's another powerful image from the Bible. In the celestial Jerusalem, there will be no more death, mourning, or pain. Can you imagine that? A place free from all suffering, where every tear is wiped away. It's a reminder that the struggles we face today have a greater purpose. That daily grind that sometimes feels pointless, it's shaping something eternal in you. So next time you feel overwhelmed, remember, the pain is temporary, but the transformation is forever. So how can we start preparing for this transformation? Here's something practical. Take a closer look at your life and identify areas that need change. Maybe it's how you manage your time, your priorities, or even your relationships. Start small, perhaps by reading something uplifting like The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. Or practice daily gratitude by writing down 3 things you're thankful for every evening. Tiny adjustments can have a massive impact. And here's the amazing part. You're not walking this path alone. God walks with you, providing strength and direction. It's as if He's saying, "Trust me, I've already prepared a place for you." Now, speaking of places, let's dive deeper into what it takes to walk this journey toward the celestial Jerusalem. After all, an incredible journey deserves thoughtful preparation. Let's go! Before we continue, leave your like and subscribe to the channel to be blessed with more videos to inspire your life. The journey to the celestial Jerusalem. Now that we know how amazing the celestial Jerusalem is, one big question remains. How do we get there? Well, the answer isn't a GPS or some shortcut. The road to the heavenly city is, above all, a spiritual journey. The Bible emphasizes faith, perseverance, and obedience as essential elements of this path. Imagine it as a challenging hiking trail, sometimes steep, sometimes slippery, but always worth it. The good news? We're not walking it alone. God promises to be our guide, providing direction every step of the way. And who are the travelers on this road? Revelation speaks of the 144,000 sealed and the great multitude from every nation. These numbers and images are symbolic, representing those who remain faithful to God's will. But here's the thing, you don't have to be perfect to walk this path. On the contrary, the message is that God's grace is available to anyone who sincerely seeks to align their life with His purposes. Isn't that comforting? Now, practically speaking, how does this journey play out in our daily lives? It's simple. Intentionally choose things that draw you closer to God. This could be through moments of prayer, reading scripture, start with Psalms or Proverbs, or meaningful conversations with people who share your faith. Oh, and here's a bonus tip. Avoid carrying unnecessary baggage. You know, those grudges or guilt trips you've been holding on to. Letting go of those can make your journey a whole lot lighter. And about those tough moments when everything seems to go wrong, that's where we learn the most valuable lessons. The path to the New Jerusalem isn't free from challenges, but it's in these challenges that our faith is tested and strengthened. Think of an athlete training for a marathon. Without effort, they'd never reach the finish line. Similarly, life's difficulties prepare us for something far greater. But don't lose heart. The Bible assures us that there's an indescribable reward for those who persevere. And here's what's even more incredible. This journey isn't just about the final destination. It's about the transformation that happens along the way. So, let's take it a step further and explore the role of the celestial Jerusalem in the grand cosmic battle between good and evil. What's happening behind the scenes of this epic story? Cosmic conflict and the role of the celestial Jerusalem. The cosmic conflict. This is the part where the story feels like it's straight out of a blockbuster epic. Since the beginning, humanity has been caught in the middle of a battle between good and evil. Light versus darkness, order versus chaos. And in the midst of it all, the celestial Jerusalem stands as the ultimate symbol of victory for good. It's the grand finale of this narrative, where God's plan for the redemption of all creation is fully realized. But how does this battle unfold? The Bible describes God's adversary, identified as the dragon or Satan, as determined to destroy all that is good and beautiful. That's why life often feels like swimming against the current. But here's the twist. Revelation makes it clear that evil has already been defeated. Sin and death will not have the final word. The New Jerusalem represents that victory, a city where evil has no place. Think about real-world examples of resilience, like Nelson Mandela. He endured decades of imprisonment, but never lost sight of a brighter future for his nation. In the same way, the spiritual conflict we face reminds us that hardships are temporary, but the victory is eternal. The celestial Jerusalem is the rainbow after the storm, the ultimate sign that chaos will one day be transformed into perfect order. So, what does this mean for us today? It means that even when life feels overwhelming, there's a greater light on the horizon. You know those moments when it seems like you can't take one more step? That's when God works most powerfully. He reminds us that the struggles we face are temporary, but the reward is eternal. And every small act of kindness or justice we practice here is already part of this battle for good. The celestial Jerusalem isn't just the conclusion of this cosmic story. It's also a daily reminder that good always triumphs. And this brings us to a critical question. How does this message resonate in today's world? Let's dive into the connection between this heavenly vision and the aspirations of humanity today. After all, could we be striving for something similar here on Earth? The celestial Jerusalem and humanity today. Have you ever felt like you're constantly searching for something more? A better life, deeper peace, or a stronger sense of purpose? That yearning might just be humanity's built-in desire for a kind of celestial Jerusalem. While the biblical description is divine and spiritual, it reflects a need we experience even now. The longing for a place or state of true harmony. Even in a world full of challenges, there's something inside us that craves peace. In many ways, this search is a reflection of what the New Jerusalem promises. What's fascinating is how human aspirations often echo divine promises. For instance, movements for social progress, technological innovation, or even global peace all seem like attempts to create a heaven on earth. But here's the catch. No matter how advanced we become, our efforts will always fall short of God's perfect plan. That doesn't mean these pursuits are meaningless, though. Quite the opposite. They reveal that the vision of the celestial Jerusalem resonates deeply, even in the subconscious of humanity. This brings us to a practical insight. What can we learn from the connection between the divine and the human? First, we must recognize that our search for perfection will never be complete without addressing the spiritual dimension. Building advanced cities or achieving technological breakthroughs won't satisfy the soul. Think about great empires like Rome or Babylon. They were architectural marvels, yet they crumbled because they neglected spiritual foundations. The New Jerusalem teaches us that true peace and prosperity flow from a connection with God. Another key lesson is hope. The vision of the celestial Jerusalem reminds us that no matter how chaotic life becomes, whether it's on the news or in your personal struggles, there's a bigger promise at play. This doesn't mean ignoring today's problems, but facing them with the assurance that they're not the end of the story. Here's a practical idea. Engage in something that makes a positive impact, like volunteering, joining a community project, or helping someone in need. These small actions reflect the harmony of heaven in the here and now. And have you noticed how the values of the celestial Jerusalem show up in so many things we admire? From works of art to inspiring stories, the ideals of peace, justice, and love are everywhere. But here's the challenge. Are we living out those values today, or just admiring them from a distance? The New Jerusalem isn't just about the future. It's an invitation to start building a meaningful life now. Speaking of inspiration, let's take a look at how the vision of the celestial Jerusalem has shaped art, culture, and creativity across the ages. Cultural and artistic interpretations of the celestial Jerusalem. When you think of the celestial Jerusalem, what comes to mind? Maybe an image of light, purity, and perfection. It's fascinating how artists, musicians, and writers throughout history have tried to capture this divine vision. In the Middle Ages, painters often depicted the heavenly city as a radiant, colorful paradise meant to inspire faith in those who saw it. These works served as windows to heaven, allowing people to imagine what was promised in Scripture. Music also plays a big role in expressing the hope of the celestial Jerusalem. Have you ever heard the hymn Jerusalem? It's often performed at religious ceremonies and events, embodying a message of hope and longing for a better future. But it's not just in classical art and music that we find this theme. Even in pop culture, the idea of a perfect place or a utopian future echoes the promise of the New Jerusalem. Think of stories like The Lord of the Rings, where places like Rivendell and the Undying Lands represent peace and renewal. Architecture also reflects this divine concept. Many cathedrals, for example, were designed to point heavenward, as though they were small representations of the New Jerusalem on earth. These sacred spaces invite us to reflect on something greater than ourselves. They serve as visual reminders that there's a destination worth striving for. The soaring arches, intricate carvings, and colorful stained glass all mirror the beauty described in Revelation. Today, the vision of the celestial Jerusalem continues to inspire modern art and music. Gospel songs often focus on the idea of heaven and the reunion with loved ones. It's amazing how this hope transcends time and culture, showing up in the most unexpected places. This universal longing for a perfect future reveals how deeply the message of the New Jerusalem resonates with the human spirit. But here's the final question. Are we simply admiring these representations, or are we letting them shape how we live today? Because the celestial Jerusalem isn't just about what's to come, it's a call to live with purpose and vision now. If this video has given you something to think about, share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment below. What does the celestial Jerusalem mean to you? Let's keep this conversation going.